Her lover sat at my table, drinking my whiskey, saying, "SHES with me now," until I ruined him. Imagine coming home to find another man sitting at my table, drinking my whiskey, and telling me that my wife now belongs to him. Sounds unbelievable, right? Well, that's exactly what happened to me. But what they didn't know was that I wasn't just going to walk away. I was going to destroy them. This isn't just a story of betrayal, it's a masterclass in revenge. How did I turn the tables and make my enemies regret ever crossing me? Stay tuned, because you won't believe how this ends. I had always believed in the sanctity of marriage. I had spent 9 years building a life with Amelia, my wife, a woman I once thought was my perfect match. We met in our late 20s, both ambitious, both determined to carve out a future that others would envy. I worked my way up as a financial analyst, and she thrived in the world of corporate marketing. Our life in New York was the kind most people aspired to: high-rise apartment with a view, weekend getaways to the Hamptons, dinner parties with successful friends. On the surface, we were the ideal couple. But I had begun to notice the cracks. It started subtly, as most betrayals do. Amelia had always been an outgoing woman, charming and confident. She could walk into any room and command attention without effort. That was part of what had drawn me to her in the first place. But recently, her energy had shifted. There was a different kind of confidence in her stride. Something detached. Something distant. It wasn't just the way she carried herself, but how she seemed to drift further away from me with every passing day. She worked late more often now. "Big project," she would say, brushing her hair back and slipping into her coat as she kissed me on the cheek, barely meeting my eyes. The first few times, I didn't question it. I understood deadlines, the corporate grind. But then came the hushed phone calls in another room, the way she'd lower her voice, laughing at something that clearly wasn't meant for me. If I entered the room, she'd hang up quickly, tossing her phone onto the couch like it was nothing. "Just Emily," she would say, referring to her best friend. "She's going through some stuff." I had no reason to doubt her. Until I did. The breaking point came on a Friday evening. I had planned a quiet night and I bought a bottle of wine, ordered takeout from our favorite Thai place, and was looking forward to unwinding with my wife. But Amelia never came home. I texted her. No response. I called. Straight to voicemail. Hours passed, and finally, at nearly 1 in the morning, the door clicked open. She walked in, her makeup slightly smudged, her hair tousled. "Where were you?" I asked, keeping my voice level. She froze for a moment, then forced a laugh, setting her purse down on the counter. "Out with Emily. We got drinks, lost track of time." I stared at her, waiting for more. Waiting for something that felt like the truth. "And you didn't think to text me?" I hesitated just long enough to catch the flicker of guilt in her eyes, before she masked it. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "I'll let you know next time." But there was something in the way she said it. Something practiced. Something careful. I nodded, but inside, something twisted in my gut. I wanted to believe her. I had spent nearly a decade loving this woman, building a life with her. But the nagging feeling in my chest refused to settle. The following night, as Amelia slept beside me, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. I wasn't a paranoid man. I wasn't the kind to snoop or dig for problems that didn't exist. But my instincts were screaming at me. The next morning, as Amelia was in the shower, I saw her purse sitting on the nightstand. I had never gone through her things before, but something inside me urged me forward. My fingers found the crumpled piece of paper tucked beneath her wallet. A receipt. A dinner for two at a high-end restaurant. One we hadn't been to in months. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the small slip of paper like it was a grenade in my hands. Amelia had always been honest with me. At least, that's what I had believed. But the pieces were starting to fall into place: late nights, secretive phone calls, unexplained absences. I had been telling myself I was imagining things, that I was overthinking. But now, the doubts I had pushed aside came crashing down all at once. I clenched my jaw, exhaling slowly. Anger surged through me, but I swallowed it down. Anger wouldn't solve this. Anger would only make her defensive, give her an excuse to spin more lies. If she was hiding something, if she was betraying me, I needed to be smart. I needed proof. That day, while Amelia was at work, I made a call. "Noah," I said, my voice steady despite the storm brewing inside me. I need your help. Noah Walker had been a detective with the NYPD before he left the force to work in private investigations. We had met years ago through mutual friends, bonded over whiskey and poker nights. We hadn't spoken in a while. But when I explained my situation, Noah didn't hesitate. I'll find out the truth, he said. Whatever it is. I hung up, my hands tightening into fists. I wasn't ready for what I was about to uncover. But I knew one thing, whatever the truth was, I would face it head on. That night, as Amelia sat across from me at the dinner table, scrolling through her phone, laughing softly at whatever message she was reading, I watched her carefully. She looked so normal. So comfortable. Like everything was fine. And for the first time, I wondered if I had ever really known her at all. I had always been the type of man who valued trust above all else. It was the foundation of my marriage, the unspoken promise between Amelia and me that no matter what happened, we would always be honest with each other. But now, as I sat in my car outside her office building, watching her step onto the sidewalk, that trust felt like nothing more than a naive illusion. My fingers tightened around the steering wheel as I watched her scan the street, her phone pressed to her ear. A cab pulled up, and instead of heading home, she slid into the back seat without hesitation. I exhaled slowly, forcing myself to remain calm. I had expected this. Noah had warned me that once I started looking, I wouldn't like what I found. I had spent the past few days pretending nothing was wrong, acting as though I was still the clueless husband. Amelia believed me to be. But Noah had already been at work. The first report came in the night before, a short email that changed everything. She's been meeting the same man for the past 3 weeks. They keep their distance in public, but it's clear there's something going on. I'll get you pictures soon. I stared at those words for a long time, my heart pounding in my chest. 3 weeks. How many nights had she come home late in those 3 weeks? How many times had she kissed me goodbye in the morning, knowing she was planning to see another man? Now, as I followed the cab from a safe distance, I felt a strange sense of detachment. I wasn't the betrayed husband, not yet. I was an observer, collecting facts, piecing together the puzzle. The cab came to a stop outside a sleek, upscale hotel in Midtown. The first pulled over across the street, watching as Amelia stepped out, her eyes darting around as if checking to see if anyone was watching. A few seconds later, a man approached her. Tall, well-dressed, with a confidence that made my stomach turn. The two exchanged a glance, just a glance, but it told me everything I needed to know. She wasn't just meeting a colleague. This wasn't just business. She was invested. The man placed a hand on the small of her back, guiding her toward the entrance. And Amelia didn't flinch. She didn't pull away. She leaned into it. My breath came slow and steady as I pulled out my phone and snapped a picture. I didn't even know why. I already knew the truth. Maybe it was just to make it real, to have something tangible in my hands that confirmed what my gut had been screaming all along. I sat there for a long time, gripping the phone, staring at the photo, until finally, I put the car in drive and left. That night, when Amelia came home, she was different. Lighter. Like a weight had been lifted off her shoulders. She greeted me with a kiss on the cheek, smiled as she asked about my day. She poured herself a glass of wine, sat on the couch, and scrolled through her phone like she didn't have a care in the world. And I just watched her, studying every detail. She didn't know that I knew. And that was my advantage. The next morning, Noah called. Got an ID on the guy, he said. Sebastian Cole. 41. Runs a private investment firm. Pretty successful. But here's where it gets interesting, he's married. I felt something cold settle in my chest. You're kidding. Nope. Wife's name is Lydia Cole. She's a philanthropist, big in the charity scene. The two of them are like royalty in their social circle. Picture perfect couple. Except, for the part where he's screwing your wife. I leaned back in my chair, rubbing a hand over my face. And his wife, does she know? Doubt it. From what I've seen, she has no clue. But she's about to. I let the silence stretch between us, considering my options. I had proof. I had names. And now, I had leverage. Noah, I said finally, I need you to keep digging. I don't just want to know where he takes my wife. I want to know everything. His finances, his business dealings, Any dirt you can find. Noah chuckled. Man, you're going for the kill. My jaw tightened. I'm not just going to confront them and let them walk away. I want to make sure when this blows up, there's no coming back from it. For the next few days, I played my part. I kissed Amelia goodbye in the morning, sent her text asking about her day, listened to her fabricated stories about work stress and long meetings. I watched her lie to my face without hesitation. And each night, when she fell asleep beside me, I lay awake, planning. Noah continued to feed me information. Sebastian's firm had a history of questionable investments, borderline illegal financial maneuvers that had somehow gone unnoticed. If those transactions were exposed, his career could be over. Then came the final piece. One evening, as I was scrolling through the latest file Noah had sent me, my phone buzzed with a text. Noah, you're gonna want to see this. A few seconds later, a photo popped up on my screen. Amelia and Sebastian. In a car. But not just sitting together, she was in his lap, laughing, her arms around his neck as he kissed her. I stared at the image, my vision tunneling, my fingers tightening around the phone. That was it. That was the moment. I wasn't just some naive husband anymore, waiting for the inevitable confession. I wasn't going to let them get away with this. Let them pretend their actions didn't have consequences. The game had changed, and now, it was my turn to play. I now had the truth. My wife wasn't just cheating. She was knee-deep in financial fraud with her lover. But instead of confronting her right away, I did something even more dangerous. I stayed quiet and started planning. Now, let me ask you, if you were in my shoes, what would you do next? Comment 111 what if you'd expose them immediately. Comment 222 what if you'd wait and make them suffer. Trust me, you're going to want to see how this unfolds. I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. The city lights flickered around me, casting long shadows through the windshield as I parked across the street from Amelia's office building. My heart pounded steadily, not with fear, but with the slow, simmering anger of a man who had begun to see through the lies that had been fed to him for weeks, maybe months. I wasn't sure anymore. I had spent the past few days pretending, forcing myself to smile at my wife's stories, nodding along as she fabricated another excuse for why she had to stay late, why she had to take a last-minute business trip, why she always seemed just a little too preoccupied, a little too distant. But now, after everything Noah had uncovered, I knew the truth. And once you see the truth, you can't unsee it. The elevator doors slid open, and there she was, Amelia, stepping out of the building, her phone clutched in her hand. She looked around briefly, as if checking for something, then walked briskly toward the curb. I watched in silence as she tapped on her phone, barely 10 seconds passing before a sleek black sedan pulled up. Not a cab, a private car service. Not for work. She opened the door and slid inside, the interior swallowing her up before the car pulled away into traffic. I exhaled slowly, forcing myself to stay composed as I started my engine, and followed from a distance. The streets of New York were busy enough to provide cover, but I still kept a few cars between us, careful not to draw attention. It had become a routine now. I had followed her twice before, both times leading to the same destination, a high-end restaurant. One of those quiet, dimly lit places where wealthy men took women they shouldn't be seen with. Amelia wasn't meeting her colleagues there. She wasn't meeting Emily. She was meeting Sebastian Cole. My jaw clenched at the thought of him. I had seen the man's face in the photos Noah had sent. Handsome, well-dressed, dripping with the kind of arrogant confidence that came from getting everything you wanted in life. And now, he had my wife. The car weaved through traffic, heading west. I followed, my fingers tightening around the gear shift. I had told myself I wouldn't let my emotions get the best of me, but the weight in my chest grew heavier with each block we passed. Then, something changed. The car didn't take the usual route. It didn't turn toward the restaurant. My pulse quickened as I watched Amelia's car glide down a quieter street, stopping in front of a luxury apartment building. The kind of place where a man like Sebastian would keep his secrets. I pulled over a block away, my mind racing. I watched as Amelia stepped out, hesitated for just a second, then disappeared through the building's glass doors. I leaned back in my seat, staring at the entrance. So this was where she went when she told me she had late meetings. This was where she laughed, whispered, and gave herself to another man. The weight in my chest turned into something sharper, something cold and final. A part of me had still hoped that maybe I was wrong, that maybe there was some explanation, that she would turn around, walk back out, call a cab home, that this wasn't what it looked like. But she didn't. And now, there was no denying it. I sat there for what felt like an eternity, watching the building, watching the cars pass by, listening to the steady hum of the city. The part of me that wanted to storm inside, demand answers, make them feel the same kind of pain that was tearing through me, fought against the part of me that was smarter, colder, more calculated. Sebastian had money, power, influence. A confrontation would do nothing but give them the satisfaction of watching me break. No, I wouldn't break. I would build a plan. A way to ensure that when they fell, they wouldn't get back up. My phone buzzed. A message from Noah. Got more on Cole. Call me when you can. I stared at the screen for a moment, then started the car, pulling away from the curb. Amelia had made her choice. Now, it was time for me to make mine. I parked in my usual spot near my office, the morning sun barely breaking through the New York skyline. My coffee sat untouched in the Q folder, long gone cold. I hadn't slept much. After watching Amelia disappear into Sebastian's building the night before, I had driven around aimlessly, trying to calm the raging storm inside me. But there was no calming it. There was no erasing what I had seen. The proof was undeniable now. And soon, it would be more than just a gut feeling. It would be documented, analyzed, and placed in my hands by the one man I trusted to uncover every single detail. My phone buzzed. Noah. I took a breath, swiping to answer. You free? Noah's voice was steady, businesslike, the way it always was when he was about to deliver something significant. Yeah. What do you got? Meet me in 20. My office. I didn't need to be told twice. I grabbed my keys, got back in the car, and drove across town, barely noticing the traffic. My hands gripped the wheel, my mind racing through every scenario of what Noah might have found. I already knew Amelia was cheating, but what else? Was it just the affair, or was there more? By the time I reached Noah's office, I was practically vibrating with tension. The building was nondescript, an old brick structure with a small metal plaque by the door. Walker Investigations. I stepped inside, taking the stairs two at a time until I reached Noah's office. The door was already open. Noah sat behind his desk, a thick manila folder in front of him. He looked up as I entered, nodding toward the chair across from him. Close the door. I did as I was told, then sat, my eyes locked onto the folder. My pulse pounded in my ears. Noah exhaled, tapping the folder with his index finger. I don't say this often, but you're gonna want to brace yourself. My jaw clenched. Just tell me. Noah slid the folder forward. Sebastian Cole, 41 years old, owns and operates Cole Financial Group, one of the more exclusive investment firms in the city. On the surface, he's clean. The guy knows how to play the part: expensive suits, philanthropy events, the whole 9 yards. But when you start digging, that's when things get interesting. I opened the folder. The first page was a crisp, high-resolution photo of Sebastian and Amelia at the same restaurant I had followed her to a week ago. His arm draped casually over the back of her chair, his smile confident, hers coy. My grip tightened on the paper, but I forced myself to flip through it. More pictures. More proof. Them in a hotel lobby. Them getting into his car. Them at a private bar, Amelia laughing as Sebastian leaned in, their faces close, too close. It felt like a punch to the gut, but I swallowed it down. This wasn't the time to break, Noah continued. He's been seeing her for a while now, but here's where it gets worse. Amelia isn't just his side piece. She's involved in his business. My head snapped up. What? Noah pulled out another sheet, sliding it across the desk. She's been helping him secure clients, high-profile ones. At first, I thought it was just networking, something innocent. But then I found these. Another paper. Bank transactions. Transfers between accounts. Large sums moving around, some of them flagged as consultation fees. My stomach turned. You're telling me she's taking money from him? Noah shook his head. Not just taking it. Laundering it. I stared at him, trying to process the words. Noah leaned back in his chair, rubbing a hand over his jaw. Sebastian's company has been under quiet scrutiny for a while now. He's good at hiding things, but I have contacts who were able to pull some strings. Turns out, he's been moving money through shell corporations. And guess whose name is attached to one of them? I didn't speak. I didn't have to. I already knew the answer. Noah's voice was softer now. I don't know if she's aware of what she's gotten into, but if this goes south, she's legally implicated. If Cole goes down, she goes with him. My pulse roared in my ears. Amelia had lied to me. Had betrayed me. But this wasn't just about another man. This wasn't just infidelity. This was crime. Noah watched me carefully. What do you want to do? I exhaled slowly, my fingers pressing into the edge of the desk. My mind was no longer clouded by emotion. I wasn't some heartbroken husband anymore. I was a strategist. A man who had been given the opportunity to dismantle his enemy piece by piece. I met Noah's gaze. Keep digging. I sat in the dimly lit living room, my fingers drumming rhythmically against the arm of the couch. The weight of Noah's findings pressed down on me like a boulder, threatening to crush the last remnants of my patience. I had spent the past few days pretending, watching Amelia go about her life as if nothing was wrong, as if she wasn't wrapped up in an affair that went far beyond betrayal. I had seen the pictures, traced the transactions, and yet, here she was still playing the role of the devoted wife. The front door clicked open, and Amelia stepped inside, shaking off the cold night air. She was dressed in a sleek black dress, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor. I could still smell the faint traces of expensive wine, and Sebastian's cologne clinging to her, as she walked past me toward the kitchen. "You're up late," she said, her voice casual, like nothing was amiss. I didn't respond immediately. I watched her as she poured herself a glass of water, taking slow, measured sips, completely unaware of the storm brewing just a few feet away. "Where were you?" I finally asked, my voice low, steady. She glanced over her shoulder, her expression carefully controlled. "Drinks with Emily." I let the silence stretch between us. She didn't fidget, didn't falter. She had grown too comfortable with lying. I reached over to the coffee table, picking up the manila folder Noah had given me. I flipped it open, pulling out a single photo, and laying it face up in front of me. Amelia turned back toward me just as I slid it across the table. The blood drained from her face. The photo was clear, her and Sebastian, outside his apartment building. His hand was on the small of her back, his lips grazing her temple. A moment of intimacy caught in perfect clarity. For the first time, she looked truly shaken. "Liam." Her name on her lips sent a wave of anger through me, but I forced myself to remain composed. "You lied to me," I said simply. "Again." She swallowed hard, her fingers curling into fists at her sides. "It's not what it looks like." A bitter chuckle escaped me. "That's the best you've got? That's your defense?" I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees. "Don't insult me, Amelia. I know everything." Her breath hitched, her throat working as she tried to find the right words. "I was going to tell you." "When?" I asked sharply, my patience wearing thin. "After the next dinner? After the next time you crawled into his bed?" I shook my head, my voice cold. "Don't lie to me. Not now." Her lips parted, then closed. She looked down, unable to meet my gaze. I pulled out another document from the folder, tossing it onto the table. "Tell me, Amelia, do you even know what you've gotten yourself into?" She blinked, confusion flickering in her eyes as she picked up the paper. The moment she saw what it was, her face turned even paler. Bank transfers. Wire movements. Transactions tied to Sebastian's company with her name linked to them. Her hands shook as she set the paper down. "Liam, you're in deep," I interrupted, my voice like steel. "And you don't even realize it, do you?" She stared at the paper, her breathing uneven. I didn't know." I let out a sharp laugh. "You didn't know?" I stood abruptly, pacing in front of her. "You're telling me that you just happened to have your name attached to fraudulent transactions? That you just blindly signed whatever Sebastian put in front of you?" Her eyes darted up to mine, full of panic. "He told me it was nothing. Just consulting fees. He said it was normal." I exhaled through my nose, shaking my head. "God, Amelia. You're smarter than this. Or at least, I thought you were." She took a shaky step toward me. "Liam, please, I swear I didn't mean..." "Didn't mean what?" My voice rose now, the anger slipping through the cracks. Didn't mean to cheat on me? Didn't mean to fall into bed with him? Didn't mean to commit fraud? I took a step closer, my presence towering over hers. Or did you just not mean to get caught? Tears welled in her eyes. I was stupid, okay? I thought it was harmless. My laugh was hollow. Harmless? I gestured toward the documents. This isn't harmless. This could ruin you. This could put you in prison. Her breath hitched. Liam, please, we can fix this. I stilled, locking my eyes onto hers. There it was. The shift. She wasn't just afraid of losing me. She was afraid of losing everything. And now, I realized that I was no longer the man who would simply forgive and forget. I reached for the folder, picking it up and tucking it under my arm. You don't get to fix this, Amelia. Not anymore. Her eyes widened. What does that mean? I walked past her, heading toward the door. It means I'm done playing the fool. I stepped out into the cold night air, my pulse hammering in my ears. My hands clenched into fists at my sides, but not out of rage, no. This wasn't the blind, reckless anger of a man betrayed. That had passed. What filled me now was something colder, something sharper. A purpose. I had seen Amelia's face when she realized just how deep she had sunk. It wasn't regret over betraying me that had shaken her, it was fear. Fear of what was coming next. And she should be afraid. I slid into my car, gripping the steering wheel tightly before exhaling, forcing my heartbeat to slow. This wasn't the time for impulsive decisions. If I was going to destroy Sebastian Cole, if I was going to make Amelia feel the weight of her choices, it had to be methodical, precise. My phone buzzed in the passenger seat. Noah. You all right? Noah's voice came through, steady as always. I stared ahead, my expression unreadable. Yeah. You talked to her? My grip on the wheel tightened. She lied. Right to my face. A short pause. Then, you ready to play this smart? I smirked, a humorless edge to it. You wouldn't have called if you didn't already know my answer. Noah chuckled. That's what I like about you, man. You don't lose your head. That's why we're gonna take this bastard apart. I leaned back in my seat, the tension in my chest settling into something more controlled. What do you have for me? The guy's dirty, no doubt about it. We already knew about the shell companies, but I found something even better. He's not just moving money, he's skimming from his investors. Small amounts at a time, but it adds up. We're talking millions siphoned off over the past 3 years. If this gets out, his entire firm goes under. I let the information sink in. Sebastian wasn't just a cheater. He was a thief. And now, I had the power to expose him. What about Amelia? I asked, my voice even. Noah sighed. She's wrapped up in it, whether she realizes it or not. I checked the records again. Some of those accounts? They're in her name. If the SEC gets involved, she's on the hook too. I ran a hand through my hair. I should have felt a pang of pity. Should have wrestled with some lingering sense of loyalty. But there was nothing left of that now. Good, I said. Noah hummed in approval. So, what's the plan? My mind worked quickly, the pieces falling into place. We hit him where it hurts. His money, his reputation, his personal life. I want him exposed publicly. I want him humiliated. And I want him to watch everything he built crumble. Noah chuckled. Cold, man. I like it. I started the engine, my mind racing. Send me everything you have. Every document, every transfer. I want to be ready when the time comes. You got it. I hung up, my jaw tightening as I pulled away from the curb. By the time I got home, Amelia was still awake. She was sitting at the kitchen table, a half-empty glass of wine in front of her. She looked up as I walked in, her eyes red-rimmed. Liam, she started, but I held up a hand, cutting her off. I don't want to hear it. My voice was calm, but there was an unmistakable finality to it. You made your bed, Amelia. Now you're going to lie in it. She swallowed hard. Please, just tell me what you're going to do. I stared at her for a long moment. Then I smirked. You'll see. I sat in my office, staring at the glowing screen in front of me. The files Noah had sent were open. Rows of numbers, bank statements, confidential reports, all the evidence I needed to bring Sebastian Cole to his knees. I had spent the last week refining my plan, making sure every detail was airtight. This wasn't just about catching a cheating spouse anymore. It was about dismantling a man who thought he was untouchable. I clicked the mouse, pulling up an email draft. I had written and rewritten it countless times, but now, it was perfect. Attached to it were the damning documents, each one painting a clear picture of fraud, embezzlement, and corruption. The recipients? The SEC, the IRS, a handful of well-connected financial journalists. I had timed it perfectly, sending it out just before the markets opened, ensuring maximum impact. My finger hovered over the mouse. A deep breath. Then, I clicked send. The ripple effect was immediate. Within hours, the first reports started trickling into financial news sites. Cole Financial under investigation for alleged fraud. At first, it was just whispers. A few online articles speculating on shady dealings. But then, it exploded. By midday, the news had reached the major networks. Reporters swarmed outside Cole Financial's Manhattan headquarters, cameras flashing as executives pushed past them, refusing to comment. I sat back in my chair, watching the chaos unfold on my computer screen. It was a sight to behold. And then came the real show. Sebastian, always the arrogant showman, decided to hold a press conference. I almost laughed at the sheer stupidity of it. A desperate attempt at damage control. The live feed played across every major network. Sebastian stood behind a podium, his usual smug confidence now replaced with a forced smile. He cleared his throat, gripping the sides of the podium as cameras clicked wildly. "I want to be very clear," he began, his voice smooth but strained. "These allegations are completely unfounded. My company has always maintained the highest level of integrity, and we will fully cooperate to clear up any misunderstandings." I smirked, taking a sip of my coffee. I could see the flicker of doubt in Sebastian's eyes, the way his hands clenched ever so slightly. He was nervous, he knew. And then, just as expected, a reporter stepped forward with the question I had been waiting for. "Mr. Cole, can you comment on your alleged connections to offshore accounts and the involvement of Amelia Turner in these financial transactions?" Sebastian stiffened. For the first time, his mask slipped. I could only imagine the sheer panic running through the man's veins. The entire world was watching, and now, Amelia's name was dragged into the scandal. His secret wasn't just about numbers anymore, it was personal. The camera zoomed in on Sebastian's face. He opened his mouth, hesitated, then forced a smile. Those claims are, but it was too late. The damage was done. I leaned back in my chair, watching as the man who had stolen my wife, the man who thought he had won, began to crumble under the weight of his own lies. And this was only the beginning. Sebastian barely made it through the press conference. The moment the cameras cut, he turned on his heel and stormed back into the building. His jaw clenched so tightly I was sure he'd crack a tooth. But the damage was already done. The media had smelled blood, and now they were circling like sharks. Within an hour, news outlets across the country had picked up the story, each headline more damning than the last. Cole Financial under fire for fraud allegations. CEO Sebastian Cole, accused of embezzlement, could face criminal charges. Financial powerhouse or con artist. The fall of Sebastian Cole. I watched it all unfold in real time, flipping between news channels, scrolling through articles, reading the hundreds of comments flooding in. Some people defended Sebastian, calling it a smear campaign. Others ripped him apart, calling for his arrest. The court of public opinion had already turned against him. But that was just the beginning. Noah had promised more, and he delivered. Later that evening, another leak hit the press, this time, with concrete evidence. Screenshots of internal emails, bank records, transaction logs. Everything meticulously cataloged. The documents left no room for doubt. Sebastian had been funneling investor money into offshore accounts, moving funds under false pretenses, and worst of all, Amelia's name was tied to it. That was the final nail in the coffin. By morning, the calls for an investigation had escalated into something much worse. The SEC officially announced they were launching a full-scale probe into Cole Financial. Investors panicked. Stocks plummeted. Clients pulled out. The company was hemorrhaging money by the second. Sebastian was done. I could imagine the scene unfolding in his rival's office. The board members turning on him. The lawyers scrambling for damage control. The phone calls from executives, demanding answers. The fear settled into my bones as I realized I was losing everything. And then, like clockwork, came the internal coup. News broke that Cole Financial's board of directors had voted to remove Sebastian as CEO, effective immediately. Some anonymous insider had leaked the details, how the company was desperate to distance itself. How they had no choice but to throw their fearless leader under the bus, to salvage what little remained. I knew Sebastian wouldn't take it well. A man like him, so used to being in control, wouldn't accept defeat quietly. And I was right. That afternoon, a video surfaced online. Sebastian, caught outside his office, surrounded by reporters. His once pristine suit wrinkled, his hair disheveled. The arrogance was gone. Instead, his face was twisted with barely contained rage, as he snapped at the press. "This is a witch hunt. I've done nothing wrong," but no one believed him. His empire was burning, and I was standing right there, watching it all go up in flames. I knew the moment Amelia saw the news. I had been sitting at the kitchen table, sipping my coffee, when I heard the sharp intake of breath from across the room. She stood frozen near the couch, phone in hand, her eyes darting across the screen as headline after headline confirmed what she had feared. The most Sebastian was finished. Her fingers trembled as she scrolled through the articles, reading about the SEC investigation, the plummeting stock prices, the board of directors turning against him. But the part that truly shattered her composure was seeing her own name woven into the scandal. Sebastian Cole's alleged financial misconduct, tied to business associate Amelia Turner. She sank down onto the couch, her face pale, the phone slipping slightly in her grip. "Oh my God," she whispered. I took another slow sip of coffee, watching her carefully. I didn't say anything. I didn't have to. Her breathing quickened, her fingers shaking as she pulled up her texts, scrolling frantically. Then she did exactly what I had been waiting for. She called Sebastian. It rang once, twice, then straight to voicemail. She tried again. Same result. Her panic escalated. She grabbed her laptop, pulling up her email, typing something quickly, probably begging for an explanation, for reassurance, for some kind of way out of this mess. But there would be no answer. Sebastian wasn't going to save her, and I saw the exact moment she realized it. Her hands clenched into fists, her breathing shallow. "No, no, no. This isn't happening," she muttered under her breath, her voice cracking. I leaned back in my chair, resting an arm over the back of it. "What's wrong?" I asked, feigning ignorance. She jerked her head up, eyes wide, her entire body taut with desperation. "Liam, she swallowed hard, her voice shaking. "You have to believe me. I didn't know about any of this. I tilted my head, studying her. "Didn't know? That's funny. You sure looked comfortable spending all those late nights with him. Taking his money. Signing off on things without asking too many questions." Tears welled up in her eyes, but I felt nothing. No sympathy. No pity. She had made her bed. She clutched the phone in her hands like a lifeline, staring down at it like she was willing it to ring. It didn't. It wouldn't. Sebastian had abandoned her. And now, she was finally alone. She turned back to me, her voice raw. "You have to help me." I let out a short, humorless laugh. "Help you? Like you helped me? Like you were honest with me? Please," she whispered, her hands trembling. "I was stupid. I made a mistake. But you're my husband. That has to mean something." I exhaled slowly, setting my coffee cup down with a soft clink. Then I stood, staring down at her, my expression unreadable. It used to. Then I turned and walked out of the room, leaving her sitting there in the wreckage of her choices. Just like she had left me. I stood at the window, staring out over the city skyline. The morning light filtered through the glass, casting a soft glow over the apartment, the same apartment that had once been filled with warmth, laughter, and late-night conversations. Now, it felt empty, hollow, and I was fine with that. Behind me, Amelia sat at the dining table, hunched over, her fingers gripping the edge of her phone like it was the last thing tethering her to reality. The past 48 hours had stripped away every last bit of the poise and confidence she once carried so effortlessly. Her hair was unkempt, her eyes swollen from crying. The woman who had walked into our home a week ago, still smug in her secrets, still believing she could manipulate her way out of anything, was gone. She had spent the entire night trying to call Sebastian. Over and over. And over. But Sebastian was gone. He hadn't just ignored her. He had erased her. His number was disconnected. His email bounced back. His office had been emptied out overnight. The scandal had hit hard, and just like I had planned, Sebastian had done what all cowards do: run. He had fled the moment he realized there was no way out. I had expected Amelia to break down when she realized that. And she had. She had cried, begged, pleaded, first to Sebastian, then to me. She had thrown herself at my mercy, saying that she had made a mistake, that she had been manipulated, that she had never meant for things to go this far. It didn't matter. I finally turned from the window, folding my arms across my chest. You should eat something. She looked up at me, blinking through the exhaustion. I'm not hungry. Suit yourself, I said, shrugging. Her gaze darted across my face, searching for something: softness, forgiveness, anything that would tell her I might still care. But there was nothing there for her anymore. Liam, she started, her voice barely above a whisper. I know you hate me. I didn't answer. I know I destroyed everything. And I know I don't deserve another chance. She swallowed hard. But please, please don't let this be the end. A bitter chuckle escaped me. Amelia, this ended the moment you climbed into his bed. Her face crumpled. I was stupid. I thought I wanted something more. I thought he what? I snapped, my patience finally cracking. That he was better than me? That he could offer you some kind of fantasy life? I shook my head, exhaling sharply. You destroyed everything for a man who didn't even stick around to pick up the pieces with you. And now, you want to crawl back to the life you burned to the ground? Tears spilled down her cheeks. I didn't know. No, I cut her off. You didn't care. That's the difference. She opened her mouth to say something, then closed it, shaking her head as if she was finally grasping the reality of it all. I walked over to the counter, picking up a neatly stacked pile of documents. I filed the divorce papers this morning, I said, placing them in front of her. You can sign them now, or I can have my lawyer handle it. Either way, this is done. She stared at the papers, her breath hitching. You're really doing this? Yes. Her hands trembled as she reached for them, her fingers brushing the edges like they might burn her. She hesitated. Then, after what felt like an eternity, she picked up the pen. I watched as she signed her name, the ink drying on the last remnants of our marriage. I felt nothing as I took the papers, flipping through them to make sure everything was in place. It was over. Amelia sniffled, wiping her face with the back of her hand. What happens now? I exhaled, setting the papers aside. I move on. And you figure out what's left of your life. She flinched, the finality of it settling in. I grabbed my jacket, walking toward the door. Where are you going? She asked, her voice laced with quiet desperation. I paused for just a moment, then turned back to face her. Somewhere you're not. Then, without another word, I walked out. The moment the door closed behind me, a weight lifted from my chest. I stepped into the crisp morning air, inhaling deeply, letting it fill my lungs, letting it cleanse the last traces of her from my life. For the first time in a long time, I felt free. And I intended to keep it that way. And just like that, it was over. I lost everything: my company, my reputation, my freedom. And Amelia? She begged for forgiveness, but I had already moved on. This story isn't just about revenge, it's about knowing my worth. When someone betrays you, don't waste time crying over them. Level up, take control, and make sure they feel the consequences of their choices. So, what do you think? Did I handle this the right way, or would you have done it differently? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories that hit hard. Trust is the foundation of any relationship. Once it's broken, there's no going back. My story is a brutal reminder that betrayal isn't just about infidelity, it's about lies, deception, and selfish choices. In America, where personal and financial integrity define success, one wrong move can cost you everything. Whether in marriage, business, or friendships, loyalty matters. Know your worth, protect what's yours, and never let anyone take advantage of your trust. And if someone betrays you, don't just walk away. Rise above, take control, and make sure they feel the weight of their choices. Some losses are a blessing in disguise.